just want to say thank you. I'm not even going to try and do an introduction except for myself, just to say that I'm Professor Sandy O'Sullivan, who's at Macquarie Uni. I'm a Wiradjuri person, and I'm really excited to have known the work of the wonderful Associate Professor Leesa Watego for many years. And I've written about your work, been really inspired, and I don't use that term lightly. I think we know that there is a level of inspiration that's required when you're trying to get people to understand what business can be, what networking can be, and what joining together can be. So I'm going to do the unthinkable and get you to introduce yourself.
Hi, hello. My name's Leesa Watego. I'm here today on Turrbal and Yagara country, Meanjin, also known as Brisbane. I'm very much a city girl, so I'm fully appreciative of the particular challenges that folks in regional centres face, particularly those trying to start a business. So my mobber from northern New South Wales, but I grew up here in Brisbane on the north side, and I run a business. So my business is called Iscariot Media. I started it when I was 22 years old. Actually, it wasn't called then, but I started in business when I was 22. And I still run it. So I'm the managing director of Iscariot. And what we do is we do a whole range of things, like it's a creative agency. So, and I also do a lot of business training. So I'm actually today writing curriculum materials for our trainers to go out. They'll be delivering across regional Queensland in 2021. So you may hear of a program called One Business, and that's us. So I guess in terms of some of the things that I've done over the years, Indigenous Business Month is one of those things, and it started, I always think it's like 5 years ago, but I actually think it's 7 years ago. So right. So Indigenous Business Month is, I'm one of the co-founders of that, one of the co-founders of an initiative called Black Coffee. I've been heavily involved in the Indigenous Chambers of Commerce movement. So I'm currently still, but only just, the president of the Southeast Queensland Indigenous Chamber of Commerce. That's a volunteer-run organisation. I've been pretty much running that for the last 5 years as a volunteer. And then there's a whole range of other things. So thank you for having me. It's great to say hello to everybody. I wish we were all together, but yeah, that's kind of pretty much me, I think.
And that is nowhere near everything that you do or have done at all. But I think this is one of the really powerful moments from what happened in 2020, and the connection to what happens in an ongoing way for people who are in regional areas where distance is both it's actually not just a barrier. It can be something that's really helpful because local communities can rely on one another. But obviously it is a barrier if there's distribution or, just the whole distance thing, and sometimes costs and so on. So I'm really intrigued about, you might be able to talk a little bit about what IBM did last year for a start in 2020, but also how it's transformed over that time and what it does for small businesses or even other businesses.
So IBM started, Indigenous Business Month started because there's a few of us doing the Murray Indigenous Business Masterclass with Professor Michelle Evans in Melbourne. And if anybody has an opportunity to do it, highly recommend it. And so I shouldn't say this, but this is what happens, I think, on all of the last days of your Murray program. So on the last day, in the last session, I don't know, Michelle comes into the room. I think we all get in a circle, and like sitting around in a circle, and then she says some stuff. We're like, oh yeah. And then she just leaves. And you're like, okay. And then we just start yarning. And so it's about leadership. And it's about what are you stepping in, what future are you stepping into? I don't know. I've never read her notes about what she does, but I think this is the idea of it. And then it's like, okay, so what's next? We've just spent this awesome 12 days together. We're from all around the country. What are we going to do next? And I think I said something like, we should have like a week or something. Or a month. I think I said a week or a day. I did not say a month. I'm going to say that. And then Mayra Sonta, who's from 33 Creative, she's in Sydney. She said, oh, that's a good idea. And I'm totally, while I may have been the one that said, we should have a week or a month or a day. She's the one who activated and said, okay, let's do this, and picked October. And then suddenly we've kind of gone from there. So it's Michelle Evans, Mayra Sonta, and myself. It's the three kind of founders. But what Indigenous Business Month is it's a grassroots, it's a whatever you make it. It was really funny. I think it was not last year, but the year before, I did an interview with, I do a lot of community radio interviews. And the fellow, the DJ, the interviewer says, oh, so who's funding it? IBM. And I was like, no one. He goes, what do you mean? And I said, well, no one funded it. We just said it. We just made it. And so all what we're doing is it's basically every year in October, we promote Indigenous business events. So so I guess the hardest part about building something like Indigenous Business Month, and Black Coffee is the same, it's about building that infrastructure. So you can have the idea, and people have had that idea before of having a month or a week or a day. You can have ideas, but how do you build the infrastructure to make it something that's sustainable? That's actually where the energy and the hours and hours and hours of work kind of lies. And so there's a website. We have a process for, you upload events and the events go out, and there's a PR campaign, and there's all this stuff that happens in the back end. But really it's about bringing, telling the story of Indigenous businesses from across Australia, saying, and I think one of the phrases that I used a lot in my interviews in 2020 was, we are open for business. Indigenous business is open for business. So obviously when March 2020 came around and everything was closing down, that was a really scary period, because we were like, every business, every person was going, well, what does this mean for me? And so we were certainly using that whole idea of Indigenous businesses open for business a lot last year. But I think that there's the PR team the comms team have really sort of driven, we've had articles in the Australian and, like some mainstream press, and I think they've been on Studio 10 and that sort of stuff, to really get Indigenous business into the minds of, ordinary Australians. So, yeah, I think that's probably the guts of it. It's a lot of work. But I think that particularly in the last couple of years, there's been a lot of energy around IBM, and people are just, oh yeah, that's what we do. That's what we do. And it's just become such of an ordinary thing now. And every year we have a theme. I don't know what this year's theme is going to be. Recovery, maybe. I don't know. I think last year we were actually going to focus on regional, so we may do that this year, because we're all going to travel around and go to events and stuff. So hopefully this year will be awesome again. And last year we had to pivot to a digital presence more. Like, there were events planned and we were going to go and travel and, go out and kind of really encourage that conversation. But obviously all of that was then pivoted to online. So, yeah. And
it's work that you've done a remarkable job with. I actually remember Black Coffee, the first time that I'd, because I've only been to 2 of them, just as it turns out, or 3 of them actually. But the first time was online, so
there you go.
Well before the whole 2020 thing, when it was trying to bring people together when there wasn't a venue, in all of the different locations. So
yeah, and I think that's the thing about Indigenous Business Month, is I guess it's building awareness about Indigenous business to the broader community, but it's also making, like Black Coffee, it's about building connections amongst the Indigenous business community about, hey, yeah, we're dilly, or hey, you want to do business together. So I think that we, you as a human, as a business owner, I tend to work with the people that I know. I know them, I like them, I trust them. Yeah. And sometimes they're Indigenous and sometimes they're not. As much as possible, I try to have Indigenous subcontractors within our own supply chain. We did a project last year and we had 17 Indigenous businesses. We engaged 17 Indigenous businesses in that project. And of course, that was a big project. Not every project's that big. But you work with people that you know, you like and you trust. But in order to do that, you actually have to build relationships with them. And I think Indigenous Business Month is one of those initiatives that allows us to get to know each other.
I'm glad you say one of the businesses, because I think it's been a hallmark of everything that I've ever seen you do. And so the black coffee, the whole notion of that, did that come from somewhere else? From
black coffee, yeah. So I was it was a couple of different things with black coffee. I've got a few different inspos for black coffee. There was this guy in Gavin Heaton, his name is. He lives in Sydney, and every Friday it's a bunch of startup nerds type people, early Twitter days, like Twitter 10 years ago. People, they used to get together on a Friday in some random in a cafe in Sydney, and there would be anything from 5 to 55 people turn up because they were just all there. You just go. And I was like, we can do that. And at the same time, the chamber had gone through the Southeast Queensland Indigenous Chamber of Commerce had gone through a transition. We had no funding, we had nothing. The board had pretty much kind of went, oh yeah, I'm tired, understandably. And I was the only man left standing, so to speak. And I just thought, well, we've got no money, we've got no real board, we've got nothing. Well, I can do a coffee morning. And so the first coffee morning was in our local cafe. And so I just advertised it on Facebook and just went, oh, we're going to do Indigenous Business Coffee Morning. And so I credit Gavin with that, the Sydney group of white fellas. I credit them with that kind of, oh, that's kind of what it is. And then, of course, it's grown. So then I talk a lot to the guys in Townsville Tribe and the Townsville Region Indigenous Business Network. And I talk a lot with those fellas, and Thomas and Keith were there. And Keith goes, oh, that's a great idea. I'm going to do it too. But he called his black coffee. I called mine Indigenous Business Networking Friday Coffee Morning, which is not very sexy compared to black coffee. So I was trying to do was, because Southeast Queensland region is actually quite large. So it's Sunshine Coast to the Gold Coast, Ipswich, Toowoomba, Straddie, and everywhere in between, which is massive. And so every week, every Friday, I would travel to another region and host a coffee morning. And then I was saying to people who lived at like Logan, well, I don't live in Logan. Tell me a good cafe. So I was trying to engage people that way by traveling. And yeah, sometimes I'd be the only person. It didn't matter. I had my phone and my laptop and I'd do some work and have some eggs, like whatever. It wasn't a big drama. And then, then Thomas came along and said, I'm going to do it too in Townsville. I'm going to call it Black Coffee. And then Keith, who happened to be down here, it's all these little, and then this happened, and then this happened. But Keith was here. He goes, you two should join up. And I was like, we totally should. And the first one we did was at a little cafe at Ashgrove, and we Zoomed each other. It wasn't Zoom then. I don't know if we Zoomed. I can't remember what we did, but we actually, Townsville was online, Brisbane was online, and we could see each other, and so... And we were going to do it the next month, but then there was a cyclone and then the internet didn't work the month after that. So the kind of that connected bit kind of has died a bit, but that's sort of, it's that kind of bit of, just joining people together with what you've got, and I guess now we're at that stage where, I kind of think of it as, so I'm a park runner, so I like park run on a Saturday. So I kind of think of it as a bit like park run. So now we have lots of black coffees happening all around Australia, and we have one central point that organises it. They're all called Black Coffee, but, and then so I'm trying to build a platform to kind of bring everybody together. That's a whole nother story, but yes, so that's Black Coffee. But again, it's about people doing business with each other, just by meeting each other. And we don't have any funding, we just do it. So that
makes it so powerful. I think about Murra, and I think about which is this program that is about doing what we know non-Indigenous people the world over have done for centuries, which is build networks that are across business that grow intentions and grow understandings and grow a whole lot of things that haven't been that helpful to the rest of us necessarily. And then I see Murra kind of intervening in that. I may as well take.
And I think Murra is good because people say, what's the point of Murray? Because I mean, the stuff that you learn, you could probably learn it anywhere, but it's the network. It's the network and the connections. You're in a room with someone. Like, I love my internet and I love Zooming, and I don't have to leave my house, and I can get dressed or not, like whatever.
Yeah.
No shoes or no shoes, no one really knows. But there is real value in actually being together, like physically in the same spot. And I think for me, the value of Murray is really about those taking time out of your business. Like, you actually have to leave your business, travel to Melbourne, sit in a room for 12 days over, a number of modules and stuff, but actually sit in the room and be together and talk and build relationships. So I think that as much as I love my internet and social media, obviously, being there, connecting physically with people, if you can do it, not everybody gets to do it, but if you can do it, I think there's real value in it.
It's powerful. And I mean, it's interesting because I think I've always seen, as I've written or thought about your work, but also just talked about you and observed it, I've seen that it's not only the enormous amount of energy and work that you put into all of this. I mean, you talked about other people who are doing it too, but I really want to reflect on how much work you've done, not paid, work that you've done in developing up other people's businesses. And I mean, there's something incredibly powerful about that, but also I think people should recognize that it's not magic stuff. That's why I'm glad that you mentioned earlier about about somebody asking you about who funds it, in the case of IBM.
Yeah, and I think he was a bit shocked. He's kind of like, it was just such a, I don't understand. Like, well, no, we didn't get funded. We just went, okay, well, let's try this for a year, see if it works, and then we can get some sponsors. And we got sponsorship. So we did get sponsorship, and we do, with IBM, I do get a little bit of income to pay people to build websites and stuff now. Yeah. But yeah, it's just, there's nobody from up on high.
No, and there's nothing. I wasn't mentioning that because I thought it was altruistic or anything. Like, it's not better if we don't get paid and we just.
Oh yes, yeah.
It's often what we have to do when we're starting. Again, if somebody goes to Harvard or they go to one of these business schools where it's always been about supporting, white people, quite frankly, even though there are certainly other people who are engaged and making these important spaces for other communities now. It was always about that. There wasn't a default of this, and you've made some of those defaults. I wanted to ask you, in thinking about that, about the markets this year, and how that went, because that was a that must have been one of the hardest pivots.
It was, and there's been some really interesting stuff. So Meanjin Markets is it's run by the Chamber of Commerce, so the Southeast Queensland Indigenous Chamber of Commerce. It was originally a project as a result of the Commonwealth Games, Gold Coast Games. So there was lots of conversation around fake art, and there's all these complications with Commonwealth Games, like you couldn't actually sell stuff there's like a radius, and there's all this legal stuff that goes along with Commonwealth and Olympic Games and stuff. And so there was this physical kind of, the Gold Coast was there and the rest of South Queensland's over here. And then so Louise Penwell and Duncan Kerslake, who were working in the Commonwealth Games, the department, and trying to get businesses on board and give Indigenous businesses opportunities within the game, said, well, let's try our markets. And we'd had conversations about markets before, but they're not exactly easy. And so anyway, so we got the funding for it, and then we put the first two markets on, the first market was specifically about the games. Second one came along. Then in 3 and 4, but what's interesting about what I think is the most valuable thing about the games, and I should write it up, I probably will sooner rather than later, is that what we did was, so the space is really weird. It's at Radcliffe Place, so it's a physical space. But what we did was we had a marketplace, and then we had stall holders. So I used to describe it to people like a shopping centre. So you know how you go into a shopping centre, and there's the eatery, so there's the food. Here's all the shops that you can go to. And then over there is like Myers or David Jones, and they sell stuff from lots of different people. So the marketplace is kind of like that, where we had people selling from all across, mostly Queensland, because it was the Commonwealth Games, it was funded and everything. But the way that over the last couple of years, the way that we've developed that is the marketplace is for those folks who, you know, they might have a pair of, you know, they might be just started getting into weaving, or they might have some printmaking or lots of earrings. These are one of our market stall holders, Macquarie. So they have some products, but don't have a lot. So then you get to go into the marketplace and we will sell that product for you, very minimal commission. We'll manage it. You send it, we do it all up, we sell it, then you get sent that kind of stuff. And then so you start out in the marketplace, and then after a market, you're like, oh, that was really good, because you get to test the market. You get to test to see what people like and what they don't like. And then you graduate to a stall or half a stall. And then the next market, you graduate to a full stall, or then you graduate to a double stall. And hopefully one day you actually graduate and you don't need Meanjin markets anymore. So for me, the power of Meanjin markets, and this is just something that's not something that we thought of, we didn't plan that this was going to happen, but it's just kind of evolved that way, is that it's stepping stones, and it's taking you through, it's guiding you through as a creator. I'm going to try this, see what market thinks, then I'll try something else, and then, you know, and then you get to grow your business. And one of the things that we do with Meanjin markets is we actually, the creative producers, support the stall holders. So we have a closed Facebook group where people are talking about stuff. We do some little training and that kind of thing. So it's really about supporting people through their business growth. So of course March happened, and we do it twice a year. So it's in May, and then it's in April, May, November, December, depending on when the space is available. But one of the things that so of course March 2020 happens, and we're like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Everything's closing down, because planning a markets isn't something you do in a week. You actually need 2 or 3, 4 months to plan it. And so we're like 3 months out from the markets, going, what's happening to the world? And so we make this decision very early on in the piece, and the department that funds us were like, oh, I think you might be overkilling there. I think they were thinking, you'll be right. And this is in March. And we said, no, the health of our community is paramount. And so we had Archie Roach the year before, and the place was absolutely packed. Like, you could not move. So there's performers, so there's musicians and all that sort of stuff. And then so we realized that if we were going to hold the markets again, not knowing what the future was coming, there's no way that we could guarantee that we could keep our community healthy and safe. So we said, we're not going to have a markets. We're going to do an online market, 100% online. So what we ended up doing was we created these videos about for all of our stall holders to create their own videos. We had content. So we were still, the great thing about Meanjin is that we were still engaging artists. They were getting paid. So we did 17 hours of live streaming. I think it was one of the first Indigenous events to live stream. So we did 17 hours. So that's all day Friday, and Friday from 9 a.m. till 9 p.m, Saturday from 9 till 5. So was music, it was cooking demonstrations. All of our stall holders did their own videos, and, you know, and then and performers the whole time, and it was amazing. But what was really interesting, and then so we did that again in November, but we only did one day. But what was really interesting was, in our normal face-to-face markets, we say, hey, Southeast Queensland, Meanjin markets is on. Yeah. You know, and so we're drumming up interest of Southeast Queensland. But of course, we're not limited by Southeast Queensland when you do online. You actually suddenly have the entire world. So a number of our stall holders were able to then generate markets that were far and above our normal region. So they have now customers across Australia and internationally, because they went, oh, the internet actually doesn't recognize geographical boundaries. Postage is a bit of a bummer, but really we can sell to the whole world. And so we did, we had a week where we did Indigenous X for a week, which of course blows everything up. Kerry Klim, she's our comms person, and so she's a queen on Twitter and on social media. So yeah, so I think it was still challenging. A number of our businesses weren't fully online in May. They were more prepared in November. So it was part of that, supporting people to actually get online to grow their own their online presence, and to learn how to do social media. One of the things that we haven't done with Meanjin, and I don't know, not everybody agrees with this, it would be so much easier if a person could go, I'm going to go to the Meanjin Markets website and I'm going to buy something from this stall, something from this stall, something from this stall, and there's one shopping cart, they purchase and they're out. We don't do that. So we are not an online store. We're like a portal into lots of little stalls. So the feedback that we do get is it's a bit frustrating. So there's friction sort of thing, like in terms of, you know, they talk a lot about friction in online selling. So that's a bit of a pain for people because not everybody's consistent. Some people have websites that are, some people have shopping carts on Squarespace, and some are on Wix, and some are on WordPress, and some are just to put it in my bank and I'll be fine. You know, so that's a bit of a bummer. But I do think there are Indigenous businesses in Southeast Queensland now who are selling Indigenous product. And I've always taken the position as the Southeast Queensland Indigenous Chamber of Commerce that we shouldn't compete with our businesses. So we shouldn't start a Meanjin Markets portal when there are other businesses doing that. So I kind of take that principal position, which makes it annoying for customers. But apart from that, that's probably the biggest feedback. And then it's just, I think people underestimate the amount of time that it takes to actually build an online presence. I'll just put it on social media. She'll be right. No. It's a job. It's someone's job to be your marketing person. So I think I think we all, even myself, I under it. So I'm a stall holder as well. So we have a t-shirt range and stuff. Right. So I kind of wear multiple hats in these things, and it does take time. And I think that we can easily forget that. But I think overall, the experience has been incredible. One, in developing the markets, and I would encourage anybody, if you are thinking about doing something for your region, I guess one of the things is, I think there's opportunities in creators from different regions to actually join together. I don't know if I agree with the single portal that sells everything. There are a couple of those that already exist. But, you know, I think that there's huge opportunities in online selling. But it's about, you know, telling the story of your region and connecting with other regions and being quite generous in, you know, you can't just talk about yourself all the time. I think it's one of the first lessons I learned in social media. You have to talk about lots of other things.
I think I always get very frustrated that you don't talk about yourself enough. You know, because I think the work that you're doing is remarkable. Yeah. And I think that includes, but is not limited to the work that you sell. As well as all of these other layers. And I think that's also not a surprise to me. I'm not suggesting that most people have the kind of level of multiple areas of work that you do, but
yeah, I wouldn't necessarily recommend you do this
work. No, fair enough.
I do it the way I did it.
But it's not unusual, I think, as Aboriginal people to be across a lot of different spaces. I think there's been reasons why that's happened. And
I think it's quite multidisciplinary, like like we talk about, you know, empowerment, but you're talking about business, but you're also talking about critical race stuff, and there's so many elements that you can't actually just be one thing. You have to actually be lots of different things. That's
right. If you're making art or you're putting together material, it's got, you know, it's got responsibilities to culture, and you do. You know, so there's all of these other nuances that are both part of the empowerment for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and First Nations people the world over, but it's also a responsibility, you know. So there's I just wanted to ask you very specifically about the Southeast Queensland Chamber of Commerce. Is this the first or the
second? So Mandurah Hunter, which was established by Debbie, oh my God, Debbie. Oh my God. I forgot her name. Deb.
I'll put in the name.
Put in the notes. Oh my gosh, my brain. So Deb started Mandurah Hunter, I think it was something like August, and we started in November 2006. Oh my gosh, 2006.
No, I've known about it longer than that.
And then so we just missed, we were the second. So and you know, it's been pretty much a volunteer run organization the whole time, and there's a whole conversation about that. But,
Oh.
you know, and I know that Cassowary Coast have just started, which is in Innisfail, have just started a business owners group, Indigenous business owners group, because I think that I think one of the things that's missing from from a political perspective, if you've got, so governments are, what's the word? Governments want to support the growth of Indigenous business, because if you think about what governments want a healthy community. They want taxpayers to keep everybody running so they can build roads and hospitals, and they want jobs. They like jobs. So they talk about jobs. Queensland is jobs. How do you make a job? What do you want a program? Yep, we're going to make this many jobs. Awesome. So one of the ways that they see that happening is through the development of business. So governments want to support Indigenous people to get into business because they recognise that that means there's jobs, which means there's access to healthcare and education, etc., etc. Good, bad or ugly, that's what they like. But the problem we have in Queensland as a sector, as an Indigenous business sector, is we don't have one body that speaks for us. So we don't have a representative body. Now, I think my vision, and the vision of a lot of other people, and I'm not making this, like I'm not kind of coming up with something new or fancy, is that we actually have lots of regions where the business owners of Southwest Queensland get together and go, hey, these are our big issues. These are our industries. This is our issue. Hey, dude in government, you should do X. And then Central Queensland get together, and Central West Queensland, and Torres Strait, and the Cape, etc., etc. So we have the Southeast Queensland Indigenous Chamber of Commerce, and because of our location to government, we kind of have I have a lot of conversation. I've had over the years a lot of conversations with government, but it's only because I happen to be here in Brisbane. But if other organisations existed in other parts of the state, they could be talking to you. You don't have to talk to me. And I'm always going, hey, what are you guys doing up north? Come and join the bandwagon. But of course, recognising that, one, I do it as a volunteer. I'm quite privileged. I have decent internet. I managed to make a living from my business. I haven't always, but at the moment I'm okay. Everything's okay. But if we have more regional representation across Indigenous business, I think that means that, and government want to be able to speak to people. They actually want to, I don't know, it's not perfect. It's not a perfect system, but it's the one we have at the moment. But if we have regional representation of Indigenous voices of the sector, of the Indigenous business sector, in whatever form that takes, I think it makes our position much more powerful. So we've been travelling a lot around regional Queensland. So we've just delivered a program called Solid Business in Macquarie, the Burdekin, and in Innisfail. We'll be finishing Innisfail very shortly. I'm supposed to be in Innisfail today delivering a digital training program, but unfortunately the 3-day lockdown happened and we couldn't get on the plane on Monday. But we've been talking to those regions going, you need to have representation. As the Southeast Queensland Indigenous Chamber of Commerce, I can't speak for you. You need to speak for you. You need to have an owners group, business owners group, have some black coffees, then you start a chamber of commerce, and then eventually all the chambers can speak to each other and then have a statewide chamber. So that's certainly my vision, and the vision that I kind of am pushing as I'm getting ready to depart the Southeast Queensland Indigenous Chamber of Commerce to hand it over to somebody else. I think that that's the work that we need to do, is to make sure that whatever your issues are in Southwest Queensland or, Northwest Queensland or the Cape, we can't speak for you in SEQ. You need to speak for yourself, and government need to listen to you and your issues. So, yeah.
Oh, that's incredibly powerful. I think my last question for you is something that you've woven all the way through this, but it's thinking about this digital. It feels almost like a graft to not be having it as a part of the ongoing discussion anyway, because it is. But it's interesting in regional areas in particular, where there's a level of remoteness from the capital city or from the rest of the country, or or internationally. I mean, what power, or what, I don't know, what influence?
I think we have to do more work to make sure. So we've run Indigenous and mainstream programs, business development programs, both in the city and regionally, and even yeah, connection. If you can't connect, what are you like? Oh my God, we've had people from Gundawindi in our programs, and you can see them just pop in and then they go out and then they come in and then they go out because the connection's not there. We have to have internet connection. As a business owners group, and I'm going to come back to my point before, it's like, okay, did you know that the business owners group of Southeast Queensland are saying that the internet is not good enough? Okay, let's go and lobby for that. So having representation means we get to then fight in a much more organised way for those things that you need, and you have to have connection. I do not know. I'm so lucky. My internet drops, in and out. I'm 7 k's from the city, and I think we may have NBN. I think we may have got it now. I don't know, whatever. But I have 3 screens, and I have all the software, and I have my internet connection. If it doesn't work, I tether off my phone. But that's how I can do my work. And I can work with 17 business owners from across Queensland on projects because we're all connected to the internet. Your internet is fundamental. Beyond the internet, then you need to have imagination and possibility. Like, what's possible? Anything's possible, like from where you sit. So it's about hope and the freedom to imagine, I think, is you get the internet connection, and I don't know which one comes first, the freedom to imagine a thing, imagine an idea, and then go, oh, how am I going to make that come to life, and kind of start thinking through those things. I think that that's fundamental, and that's you need that. Not everybody has that, regardless of where they sit, because they've got a whole bunch of other issues going on in their life. That means they don't have the freedom to imagine. And then, of course, there's basic stuff like know-how. Like, I've spent so I'm 51 or 52 this year. I can't remember. I actually forgot. I can't remember. Anyway, I think I'm in the 50s. But, I'm now suddenly learning how to do finances better. Like, because that's been my burden, coming from, that's a intergenerational, I don't know anything about money. Like, and I have some so unpacking money story is one of my passions right now. But along with digital, but so you've got to have skills, and you've got to have knowledge, you've got to have people who you can talk to, you've got to have a bunch of stuff that I think that the internet allows us to have if we actually physically can't be together, I think. Yeah.
Well, that's there were some incredibly powerful moments, not just in that last section, but across this discussion. Thank you so much.
That's okay. Best of luck. Happy to connect.